So there's a new Superman movie coming out shortly, Man of Steel, and regular viewers of my channel will not be surprised to learn that I'm going to be reviewing the previous Superman feature films leading up to the release of Man of Steel and my review of that movie on June 14th. But I'm going to break from the format that I've established in the past when I've done this with Batman and Spider-Man and Star Trek. Those other times I limited myself to the feature films. Well, this time with Superman, I have to break that rule just a little bit because one of the most significant and just all-around best versions of Superman ever created anywhere in any medium is a cinematic format, but it's not a feature. It's a series of shorts, and of course I'm talking about the series of animated Superman shorts produced in the 1940s by Fleischer Studios and later by Famous Studios when the Fleischer brothers disassociated themselves from it. The Fleischer Brothers Superman, as it is informally referred to, as is absolutely one of the most outstanding takes on Superman ever done by anybody in film, on TV, in the comics, literary, whatever. The Fleischer Brothers Superman is absolutely tippy-top. In fact, it may very well be my favorite version of the character ever done. I've had a little bit of a romance going with the Fleischer Brothers Superman ever since I was a very young child. I remember first watching them when I was maybe 5, 6 years old. I was very fortunate as a child that I had grandparents, and specifically a grandmother, Granny, as I called her and still call her today. That's my dad's mom. She took an interest in the things that I was interested in at that age, and when she noticed that I was getting into Superman, she went to the store and she brought home VHS releases of the Superman that she knew when she was younger, and the first of those, of course, was the Fleischer Brothers animated Superman. And I remember being very young and watching those Fleischer Brothers Superman shorts for the first time and just being mesmerized, just falling in love with them. And it's something that I've continued to return to as both a film aficionado and just as a Superman fan throughout my life since. They're just absolutely outstanding. And what is it that makes the Fleischer Brothers Superman shorts so good? Because they are universally praised. Even people who don't otherwise give a shit about Superman will praise them for their animation, for their art, for just how beautiful they are. What's so great about them? Well, from a Superman fan's standpoint, they're like the purest distillation of the character. They're like a Superman bouillon cube. They're like a Superman consommé that has been reduced down to the essential elements of the character. You've got the orphan from Krypton. You've got the superpowers, the ability to fly, the strength, the invulnerability, the X-ray vision. You've got the costume, the blue suit, and the cape, and this wonderful version of the S insignia. And you've got the secret identity. Clark Kent. He's a reporter for the Daily Planet. You've got Lois Lane. You've got Lois Lane needing to be rescued all the time. Lois Lane being the feisty reporter, always getting herself into trouble in pursuit of the story. And that's really about it. You just have the basic elements of the characters. Meat and potatoes Superman. Other than Lois, there really isn't a consistent supporting cast. Lex Luthor's nowhere to be found. This was before we would see Brainiac or any of like the signature Superman bad guys that we would think of today. So we have just Superman fighting interchangeable villains, or fighting Mother Nature, fighting natural disasters, fighting comets falling from the sky to threaten Metropolis, volcanoes erupting, giant circus animals out of control. There are all these wonderful sort of basic superhero threats that Superman is responding to in these shorts, and they're all very, very tightly written, very tightly plotted. They all follow the same basic formula, but they never feel repetitive because it's just so exciting. It's just so, it moves along. Each episode moves along at such a wonderfully quick clip that you just get caught up in it. They have a lot of fun with finding different settings in which Clark can transform into Superman. Yes, he says, "This looks like a job for Superman," every single time. But sometimes he is changing in a phone booth, sometimes he's changing in the back of a car, sometimes he's changing in an elevator we see him in silhouette taking off his suit and changing into his Superman costume, or in an alley where his shadow is cast large on the side of a wall. There's some really wonderful variations on the changing from Clark to Superman. And it keeps it fresh and keeps it new and exciting, even though in terms of the story formula, it's pretty much the same every time. Clark and Lois show up someplace, something horrible happens that requires Superman's attention. Clark is either separated from Lois naturally, or he has to sneak off somewhere and he delivers his signature line and he changes into Superman and he flies into action. The other thing that makes the Superman shorts of the Fleischer Studios so noteworthy is how well executed everything is. It's not just that they have these interesting elements of this character that we've come to love over the years, and you can look back on them with nostalgia or what have you. They're so skillfully executed. The animation, the beautiful hand-drawn 1940s era animation is just stunning. It is so beautiful to see and so well done, so smooth and so creative and so vivid. The way those character designs are, they're just the perfect balance between what Will Eisner would have called, with his classic comic book artist, cartoonist sensibility, Bigfoot and Littlefoot. They're realistic, they're well proportioned, and yet they're cartooned just enough to not feel too hard or too realistic. So that we can give ourselves over to the fantasy of what we're seeing. There were 17 of them produced in all, and I'm not going to go through every single one, but there are certain episodes, certain individual shorts of the Fleischer Brothers series that stand out for me. Of course, the original, the first one, which was released just simply under the title of Superman, has since been referred to, just for clarity's sake, as The Mad Scientist. With a mad scientist who turns like a death ray on the city of Metropolis, and there's just so many wonderful scenes there of Superman like flying against the beam of the death ray, and first he pushes it back with his hands, but it's too powerful for him, and it throws him down, and then he sort of rises up, gets a second wind, and there's that wonderful scene where he's flying up against the death ray and he's punching it. He's punching the death ray back with his fists, and it makes no sense from a physical standpoint. This is apparently some sort of a laser beam or an energy beam. He shouldn't be able to punch it back like this, but who cares? It's a wonderful visual. The sound design is great. The smacking of his fists against this energy beam, and he pushes it back into the nozzle, the barrel of the gun that he's shooting it out, and he rolls it up and pushes it back down, and somehow the energy rolls back up the pipe like it's a ball or like it's water. Who knows what it's even supposed to be? And destroys the machine, and Superman, being the great hero that he is, destroys the evil machine that the mad scientist was using to threaten the city, but he grabs him and saves his life before he is destroyed by his collapsing hideaway, and grabs Lois Lane on the way out too, and throws him in jail. And it also has a little tag with Clark and Lois at the end, where Clark sort of laments the fact that, oh, I wish I was Superman. You know, Lois talks about how wonderful Superman was, and Clark just sort of goes, oh, we can't all be Superman, Lois, or something like that. Which is an element of the character that was picked up later on in the George Reeves Adventures of Superman show, which I'll have some more to say about later in this series of reviews. Just a wonderful sort of pilot episode for the series, that Mad Scientist short. There are other ones too. My personal favorite is one called The $1 Billion Limited, where Superman thwarts an attempt at a train robbery. There's a U.S. Mint train that is carrying billions of dollars in gold bars, and these thieves attempt to hijack the train and take it for themselves, and Superman stops them. And there's this wonderful sequence where he has to pull the train along the track himself by sort of reaching behind him and grabbing the coupling of the train, because the engine has been destroyed, and he drags it himself running along the track all the way. There's a scene where the robbers try to blow up the bridge, and Superman saves the train by grabbing the front of it and pulling it up so quick that the falling cars don't have time to hit the ground, and he swoops in behind at the last second and lowers the wheels of the final car down onto the track, so that the train doesn't even derail. It's just wonderful. The attention to detail. And yes, it's totally preposterous. There's no way that would ever actually happen, but the attention to detail in the way that it is presented is just wonderful. So much fun. That's another thing that makes the Fleischer Superman shorts so timeless and so wonderful, is that they're just so much fun. There's an inventiveness and a creativity to them, and there's also, it's just cool to see Superman flying around and doing all this stuff. And the fact that it's unencumbered by continuity, it's not concerned with world building or with mythology of the character, and all of those are wonderful things that can be put to great use in telling stories. I'm not knocking them in general, but without them in these shorts, you have the ability to just forget about all of that stuff, all of the external stuff, all of the peripheral stuff, and just focus on the adventure and on the spectacle of Superman doing these fantastic feats. A few of these shorts take on a very political tone. They play today really as propaganda pieces of Superman taking an active role in fighting World War II, fighting the Japanese and the Nazis. There's a very famous short where these Japanese saboteurs, and in fact the name of the short in question is Japateurs, and they steal this gigantic aircraft that is like a flying aircraft carrier. It's like a giant bomber that launches other bombers out of it. It's this huge plane, and these Japanese agents steal it and attempt to take it back to Tokyo to use in their war effort. And Superman, of course, shows up and thwarts their efforts. And there's a very famous scene, rightly celebrated, rightly talked about, where he rescues the crashing plane. The giant bomber is falling from the sky over the city of Metropolis, and Superman is able to rescue it. He stops it flying by grabbing the nose and sort of pushing it up and landing it just so. And again, that's something that we see referenced in another later film, in Superman Returns, where he stops the crashing plane and landing it in the baseball diamond, and he grabs the nose and he sort of holds it and pushes against it. Very reminiscent of that moment. If you have not seen, for whatever reason, if you have not seen any of the Fleischer Brothers Superman shorts, you're in luck, because they're public domain. And not only have they been released everywhere on VHS, on DVD, they're available streaming online. I actually have a channel on my Roku device that is just the Superman Fleischer cartoons. It's wonderful. They're everywhere. They're on YouTube. You can watch them for free. They're just extraordinary. And if you haven't seen them for whatever reason, you owe it to yourself as a Superman fan, as a comic book fan, as a fan of good movies or good animation. Do you even need an excuse? Check them out. Watch the Fleischer Brothers Superman cartoons. They are legendary, and they are legendary for a reason. They are just about as good as it gets when it comes to Superman. After all these years, from age 5 or 6, however old I was when I first saw them, all the way up to the present day, they have always been my favorite version of Superman.